If you've been reheating last night's leftovers for years because you didn't want to waste food, I want you to pause for just a few minutes before you microwave your next meal. Because after caring for older adults for more than 3 decades, I've learned that one of the biggest threats to liver health isn't always alcohol, sugar, or even fatty foods. Sometimes it's the way perfectly good food is stored and then reheated. By the end of this video, you'll understand why 4 common foods found in millions of kitchens can become surprisingly harmful after they're reheated the wrong way. More importantly, you'll learn why adults over the age of 60 are especially vulnerable to these changes, even when the food smells fine, looks normal, and tastes exactly the way it did the night before. Before we go any further, I'd like you to participate in today's discussion. Leave a comment with your age and tell me which food you reheat most often. Is it rice, chicken, potatoes, soup? Just write your age and the food. And if you've ever experienced stomach pain, nausea, or food poisoning after eating leftovers, add the word leftovers to your comment. I'll explain later why that experience may be more important than you realize. Now let me tell you about Margaret. Margaret was 74 years old. She lived alone after losing her husband a few years earlier. Like many people her age, she hated wasting food. Every Sunday, she prepared enough meals to last nearly the entire week. She carefully placed everything into containers and reheated portions whenever she felt hungry. It seemed like the perfect routine. She saved money, she saved time, and she believed she was eating healthy, home-cooked meals. Then something began to change. At first, it was mild fatigue. She assumed she wasn't sleeping well. A few weeks later, she noticed occasional nausea after dinner. Then came bloating. Her appetite slowly disappeared. Her daughter encouraged her to see her physician, expecting they would find a simple stomach problem. Instead, her blood tests revealed elevated liver enzymes. Nothing dramatic, but enough to suggest her liver was under stress. Further evaluation ruled out hepatitis. She rarely drank alcohol. She wasn't taking any new medications. Her doctor asked detailed questions about her daily routine. One answer immediately stood out. Margaret admitted she often reheated the same meals more than once. If she didn't finish a serving, she would return it to the refrigerator, then reheat it again the following day. Sometimes that same container went through 2 or even 3 heating cycles. Was reheated food the only reason her liver tests changed? No. Medicine is rarely that simple. But her eating habits significantly increased her exposure to foodborne toxins and bacterial contamination that become much more dangerous as we grow older. Once she changed the way she stored and reheated her meals and treated the underlying cause identified during her evaluation, her symptoms gradually improved. Margaret later told me something I've never forgotten. I thought I was protecting my health by never wasting food. I didn't realize I might have been putting my body under more stress. That's exactly why I'm making this video, because millions of older adults have been taught one important lesson throughout their lives: never waste food. And I agree with that. Food waste is something we should avoid whenever possible. But there's another lesson we don't hear nearly often enough. Not every leftover remains equally safe after repeated reheating, especially after the age of 60. Here's why. As we grow older, our bodies change in ways many people never consider. The immune system becomes less efficient. The stomach often produces less acid, reducing one of your body's natural defenses against harmful bacteria. The liver, although remarkably resilient, may become less efficient at processing toxins, especially in people living with fatty liver disease, diabetes, obesity, or certain chronic illnesses. Kidney function may also gradually decline. That means something a healthy 30-year-old recovers from in 24 hours could result in hospitalization for someone in their 70s. This is one reason food poisoning is significantly more dangerous in older adults. And here's the problem. Food doesn't always warn you. Many people believe spoiled food always smells bad, or changes color, or develops mold. Unfortunately, many harmful bacteria don't behave that way. Some produce toxins that remain in food even after it's reheated. Others multiply when cooked food sits too long at unsafe temperatures before refrigeration. By the time the food reaches your microwave, the damage may already have been done. This is why simply making food hot again doesn't always make it safe again. That's one of the biggest myths surrounding leftovers. Now, I want to be very clear about something. I'm not saying leftovers are automatically dangerous. Far from it. Properly stored leftovers can absolutely be part of a healthy diet. The key words are properly stored and properly reheated. Unfortunately, those two steps are where many people unknowingly make mistakes. Over the years, I've noticed 4 foods appear again and again when discussing food safety with older patients. They're common, they're inexpensive, they're nutritious when prepared correctly, but under certain conditions, especially when cooled, stored, or reheated improperly, they can present risks that many people never suspect. And one of them surprises almost everyone. In fact, it's probably sitting in your kitchen right now. Before I reveal the first food, there's one more misconception we need to clear up. Many people believe that if food has been refrigerated, it's safe indefinitely. That's simply not true. Refrigeration slows bacterial growth. It does not stop it completely. And every time food is left on the kitchen counter for too long before refrigeration, or reheated multiple times, the opportunity for bacteria to multiply increases. Some bacteria are destroyed by heat. Others leave behind toxins that heating cannot remove. That's why food safety experts emphasize proper storage just as much as proper cooking. In the next section, we're going to talk about the first 2 foods on our list. The first one is found in almost every home, yet many people unknowingly reheat it in a way that increases the risk of foodborne illness. The second is considered one of the healthiest protein sources you can eat, but only if it's handled correctly after cooking. Understanding these 2 foods alone could completely change the way you prepare leftovers from now on. So before you open your microwave tonight, let's take a closer look at food number 1. Let's begin with the first food, rice. I know that surprises many people. After all, rice doesn't look dangerous. It doesn't have a strong smell. It doesn't seem like the kind of food that could cause serious illness. But here's what many people don't realize. Uncooked rice can naturally contain bacterial spores from a microorganism called Bacillus cereus. These spores are remarkably resistant. Cooking the rice destroys the active bacteria, but the spores themselves can survive. Now, under normal circumstances, that isn't necessarily a problem. The problem begins after the meal is over. Imagine you finish dinner and leave the pot of rice sitting on the kitchen counter while you watch television. 2 hours pass, maybe even 3. Eventually, you place it in the refrigerator. During that time, the spores may have had an opportunity to develop into bacteria that can produce toxins. Here's the important part. Some of those toxins are heat stable. That means reheating the rice later may kill many bacteria, but it may not destroy toxins that have already formed. The food can look perfectly normal. It can smell perfectly fine. Yet it may still cause nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, or abdominal cramps. For a healthy young adult, that illness may be unpleasant, but short-lived. For someone in their 70s or 80s, especially if they're dehydrated, living with diabetes, kidney disease, or chronic liver disease, the consequences can be much more serious. This isn't because reheated rice is automatically dangerous. It's because rice that was cooled or stored improperly can become unsafe before it's ever reheated. That's an important distinction. Let me tell you about George. George was 71. He loved making large batches of rice because it saved time during the week. Every evening, he scooped some into a bowl, reheated it, and returned the remaining rice to the refrigerator. One weekend, he attended a family gathering and developed severe vomiting later that night. At first, everyone blamed a stomach virus, but 2 other family members who had eaten the same rice became ill as well. Fortunately, everyone recovered. But George later admitted something. He often left the rice on the counter for several hours before putting it away because he believed hot food shouldn't go directly into the refrigerator. That's a belief many people grew up with. Modern food safety guidance is different. The goal is to cool cooked food promptly and refrigerate it within about 2 hours or sooner in very warm environments. Large portions should be divided into smaller containers so they cool more quickly. And when reheating rice, heat only the portion you plan to eat. Avoid repeatedly cooling and reheating the same batch. Now let's move to food number 2, chicken. Chicken is one of the healthiest protein sources available. It's rich in high-quality protein. It's relatively low in saturated fat. And for many older adults trying to maintain muscle mass, it's an excellent choice. So why is it on today's list? Again, the issue isn't that reheated chicken is inherently dangerous. The issue is how it's handled. Raw chicken can carry harmful bacteria such as Salmonella or Campylobacter. Proper cooking destroys these bacteria, but once the chicken has been cooked, another clock begins. If cooked chicken is left at room temperature for too long, bacteria from the environment can multiply. Every additional cycle of cooling, reheating, and returning leftovers to the refrigerator increases opportunities for contamination if food isn't handled carefully. There's another reason older adults should pay attention. Protein-rich foods spoil differently than many people expect. Sometimes the smell changes. Sometimes it doesn't. You simply can't rely on your senses alone to determine whether leftovers are still safe. I remember a patient named Carol. Carol was 78 years old and lived with her husband. Every Sunday, they roasted 2 whole chickens. It was their meal preparation for the week. One evening, Carol reheated leftover chicken for dinner. Her husband decided he wasn't hungry and put his portion back into the refrigerator after it had already been warmed. The next evening, that same portion was reheated again. Then part of it was saved once more. By the third heating cycle, neither of them noticed anything unusual. The chicken tasted normal. It smelled normal. But within 24 hours, Carol developed severe diarrhea and dehydration. She required hospital treatment because her kidneys were already vulnerable from chronic disease. Was reheating alone the problem? No. The repeated handling, temperature changes, and storage practices likely created opportunities for contamination. That's why I tell patients something very simple. Cook once, store properly, reheat once, eat it. Don't keep repeating the cycle. It's one of the easiest ways to reduce unnecessary food safety risks. Now there's another question patients often ask. Doctor, if I microwave my food until it's extremely hot, doesn't that solve everything? Not necessarily. Heat is incredibly effective at destroying many bacteria, but it doesn't erase every risk. Some bacteria can leave behind toxins before reheating ever begins. And microwaves don't always heat food evenly. One part of the meal may be steaming hot, while another section remains much cooler. That's why stirring food during reheating and ensuring it is heated thoroughly is so important. The goal isn't simply to make the food warm. The goal is to heat it evenly throughout. By now, you may be wondering whether leftovers are worth eating at all. Absolutely. They can be convenient, economical, and nutritious. The answer isn't to fear leftovers. The answer is to respect food safety. Store food promptly. Keep your refrigerator at an appropriate temperature. Reheat only what you'll eat. And avoid repeatedly warming and cooling the same meal. Those small habits can make a meaningful difference, especially as you grow older. In the next part of this video, we're going to discuss 2 more foods that surprise almost everyone. One is considered one of the healthiest vegetables you can eat. The other is a kitchen staple found in millions of homes. Both can become problematic when handled incorrectly after cooking. And I'll also explain why people living with fatty liver disease, diabetes, or weakened immune systems need to be even more careful than everyone else. Now let's continue with food number 3, potatoes. Most people would never imagine that a simple baked or boiled potato could become a food safety concern. After all, potatoes are packed with potassium, fiber, vitamin C, and complex carbohydrates. They can absolutely be part of a healthy diet, especially for older adults when prepared properly. The problem isn't the potato itself. The problem is what happens after it's cooked. Here's a situation I see all the time. Someone bakes several potatoes for dinner. The family finishes eating. Instead of refrigerating the leftovers, the potatoes remain on the kitchen counter for several hours while everyone talks, watches television, or cleans the kitchen. Eventually, they're wrapped up and placed in the refrigerator. The next day, they're reheated and eaten without a second thought. Most of the time, nothing happens. But sometimes that's exactly where the risk begins. Cooked potatoes that are left at unsafe temperatures for too long can allow harmful bacteria to multiply. Certain bacteria thrive in low oxygen environments, especially if hot potatoes are tightly wrapped and left unrefrigerated for extended periods. Older adults are particularly vulnerable because the immune system doesn't respond as quickly as it did decades earlier. A stomach infection that causes mild discomfort in a healthy 30-year-old may result in severe dehydration, hospitalization, or other complications in someone over 70. Let me tell you about Harold. Harold was 80 years old and lived alone. Every Friday, he baked 6 large potatoes because they were inexpensive and easy to prepare. One evening, he forgot to refrigerate the leftovers before going to bed. The following afternoon, he reheated one for lunch. Within hours, he developed severe vomiting and diarrhea. At first, he assumed it was just a stomach bug, but after becoming dizzy and weak, his daughter took him to the emergency department. Fortunately, he recovered. His physician later explained that the issue wasn't potatoes, it was how they had been stored. That distinction is incredibly important. Healthy foods don't become unhealthy simply because they're leftovers. They become risky when safe food handling practices aren't followed. Now let's move to food number 4, leafy green vegetables. Yes, vegetables. Spinach, Swiss chard, beet greens, and certain other nitrate-rich vegetables. For years, you've probably heard people say, never reheat spinach because it becomes poisonous. That's not actually an accurate way to understand the science. Let's separate fact from fiction. Leafy greens naturally contain nitrates. In healthy adults, nitrates themselves are not inherently harmful. In fact, vegetables rich in natural nitrates have been associated with several health benefits as part of a balanced diet. The concern isn't that reheating automatically creates poison. Rather, improper storage over long periods, combined with repeated reheating, may contribute to chemical changes and reduced food quality. More importantly, like any cooked food, vegetables that are left at unsafe temperatures may also become contaminated with harmful bacteria. So the real message isn't never eat reheated spinach. The real message is store cooked vegetables properly, refrigerate them promptly, reheat only the portion you're going to eat. Avoid repeatedly warming the same container. Those simple habits dramatically reduce unnecessary risk. Now let's talk about the liver. After all, that's the promise of today's video. Many people believe the liver becomes damaged overnight after eating one unsafe meal. Thankfully, that's usually not how the body works. The liver is one of the most remarkable organs you possess. Every single day, it filters your blood, processes nutrients, produces bile to help digest fats, stores vitamins, helps regulate blood sugar, breaks down medications, and neutralizes countless substances your body no longer needs. It's constantly working, even while you're asleep. But like any hardworking organ, it has limits. As we grow older, many adults develop conditions such as fatty liver disease, type 2 diabetes, obesity, or reduced kidney function. These conditions don't mean the liver stops working, they mean it has less reserve when additional stress is placed upon it. Now imagine your liver is already working overtime because of excess fat accumulation or chronic illness. Add severe dehydration from food poisoning. Add inflammation caused by bacterial toxins. Add the physical stress that illness places on the body. Suddenly, your liver has much more work to do. Does reheated food directly destroy the liver? No, that's an oversimplification. But foodborne illness, repeated exposure to unsafe food practices, and preventable infections can place additional stress on a body that may already be managing several chronic health conditions. That's why older adults need to think differently about leftovers than they did when they were 30 years old. It's not because food has changed, it's because our bodies have. Here's something I recommend to nearly every patient. When preparing meals for the week, divide them into individual containers while the food is still fresh. Allow them to cool appropriately, then refrigerate them promptly. That way, each meal is reheated only once. You're not repeatedly opening the same container, exposing it to room temperature, cooling it again, and repeating the cycle over and over. It's a small habit, But over months and years, small habits often make the biggest difference. In the final part of this video, I'm going to share the simple food safety rules I personally recommend to older adults, explain how long leftovers should realistically stay in the refrigerator, discuss the warning signs that mean food should be thrown away immediately, and leave you with one final story that completely changed the way one of my patients thought about leftovers forever. Now let's put everything we've discussed into one simple framework you can actually use. After more than 3 decades of caring for older adults, I've learned that protecting your health isn't usually about making one dramatic change. It's about making small, consistent decisions every single day. And food safety is one of those decisions. The first rule is simple. Don't leave cooked food sitting at room temperature for hours. Many harmful bacteria multiply most rapidly when food remains in what food safety experts call the danger zone, temperatures that allow bacteria to grow quickly. The longer food stays there, the greater the opportunity for contamination. That's why I encourage my patients to refrigerate leftovers promptly rather than leaving them on the kitchen counter all evening. The second rule is just as important. Store leftovers in smaller, shallow containers whenever possible. Many people place an entire pot of soup or a large casserole dish directly into the refrigerator. The outside cools fairly quickly, but the center can stay warm for much longer. Dividing food into smaller portions allows it to cool more evenly and helps reduce the time it spends at temperatures where bacteria can multiply. The third rule is one of the easiest to remember. Reheat only the amount you plan to eat. Don't warm an entire container if you're only going to have one serving. Every time food is repeatedly warmed, cooled, and returned to the refrigerator, the opportunity for contamination increases. One heating cycle is usually enough. Eat what you've reheated. Leave the rest refrigerated until you're ready for another meal. The fourth rule may save you from unnecessary illness. Don't rely on your nose. One of the most common statements I hear is, "It smelled fine." Unfortunately, many dangerous bacteria don't produce obvious odors. Some toxins cannot be seen, others cannot be tasted. Food can appear completely normal while still being unsafe. If you're uncertain how long something has been sitting in the refrigerator, it's usually safer to throw it away than to take the risk. I know that's difficult. Many of us were raised to avoid wasting food. I understand that completely. But remember this, food is expensive. Hospital stays are far more expensive, and your health is priceless. Now let me share one final story. His name was Walter. Walter was 83 years old, a retired school principal, sharp-minded, independent, proud that he still cooked for himself every day. One afternoon during a routine visit, we began talking about nutrition. I asked him how he handled leftovers. He smiled and said, "Doctor, I never throw anything away. If it still looks good, I eat it." That sentence worried me, not because Walter was careless, but because he genuinely believed appearance alone determined whether food was safe. We spent several minutes discussing proper refrigeration, storage, and reheating. Nothing complicated, just practical habits. A few months later, he returned for another appointment. This time, he brought a small notebook. Inside, he had written a simple routine. Date every container. Store meals in individual portions. Reheat only once. Discard anything he couldn't confidently identify. He laughed and said, "My refrigerator has become much more organized. But you know what's even better? I haven't had a single stomach problem since I changed my routine." Now, I can't promise that proper food storage will prevent every illness. Medicine doesn't work that way. People can become sick for many different reasons. But reducing unnecessary risk is one of the most powerful things we can do, especially after the age of 60. Let's quickly review what we've learned today. We've learned that leftovers themselves are not the enemy. Improper storage and repeated reheating are the real problems. We've learned that rice, chicken, potatoes, and cooked leafy vegetables can all remain healthy choices when they're handled safely. We've learned that aging changes the way our immune system responds to foodborne illness. We've learned that food poisoning may be much more serious for older adults than many people realize. And we've learned that protecting your liver isn't only about avoiding alcohol or eating less sugar. It's also about reducing unnecessary stress on your body by practicing good food hygiene every single day. Before we finish, I want to leave you with one final thought. Many people spend thousands of dollars every year on vitamins, supplements, and so-called liver detox products. Yet they overlook one of the simplest ways to protect their health: safe food handling. It doesn't require expensive equipment. It doesn't require a special diet. It simply requires good habits. Habits that become almost automatic once you understand why they matter. So tonight, before you put dinner away, take just a few extra moments. Store it properly. Label it if necessary. Refrigerate it promptly. And tomorrow, reheat only the portion you're going to eat. Those small decisions may seem insignificant, but over the course of months and years, they can make a meaningful difference in helping you avoid preventable foodborne illness and supporting your overall health. If this video helped you look at leftovers in a completely different way, I'd like to ask one small favor. Please subscribe to this channel. Every new subscriber helps us bring practical, evidence-based health information to more older adults and their families. If you found today's discussion helpful, give this video a like and share it with someone who prepares meals ahead of time or regularly eats leftovers. One simple conversation about food safety could prevent a serious illness. Remember this: your liver works for you every hour of every day. Treat it with the same care and respect it gives you. Eat wisely, store food safely, and never assume that it looks fine always means it is safe. Because sometimes the healthiest choices aren't the most complicated. They're simply the most informed.